Yes, it is I, your humble host, Bill Hatch, the third, coming to you live from the palatial home studios of Bald Spots Productions here in the beautiful city of Santa Ana, California, for another episode of Not Quite After Midnight. This morning, I am here in studio with my friend, my brother in Christ, the disembodied voice of Rudy.
Hi, everybody. I love y'all. Waka, waka, waka with the Lord.
And joining us from a more than acceptable safe social distance through the miracle of telephony are my guests for this morning, Larry Jorgensen and Matt Holten. Yeah, that's right, Matt Holten.
You got it.
Yeah. You're not Lindsay. Had some confusion there. I was thinking the person who was coming on is actually Matt's publicist. And yeah, she didn't tell me that that it wasn't her. So I've been for the last week I've been advertising Lindsay as my guest for this morning. Matt and Larry are both authors, and of very different veins, but yeah, it's gonna be interesting. So Larry, you're in Louisiana, right?
Right. South Central Louisiana.
South Central.
Right. A little town called Marksville, south of Alexandria. This is kind of called the crossroads because this is where Cajun country starts.
Ah, okay. My father, a few years back, retired from the VA. He was the hospital chaplain for the New Orleans Veterans Hospital down there, and so definitely he got quite a dose of the Cajun country. I got a bit of it when I went out to visit, but yeah, definitely a beautiful area. Just don't have any interest of being there in the summers.
It gets warm and we escape to Upper Michigan, which is why we have the book.
Right. And your book is, let's see, I don't remember the title. Bad Host.
Shipwrecked and rescued.
Okay. And it's about a shipwreck that happened way back, and isolated a bunch of cars, which definitely interests me. My first attempt at a career was in the auto industry. Actually, my first, third, and fifth attempts.
Keep doing it till you get it right. That's all.
Yeah, but yeah. Yeah, so the cars definitely interest me, and Matt, you've written a book about a moneyless society.
That is correct.
Okay, what's the title of it?
That's the title of the book.
That's the title of it.
Yeah, it's
okay.
That's the title.
Very
of the
straightforward.
Book, Moneyless Society, pretty much, right? It's the next economic evolution, and yeah, essentially we're talking about how that type is possible, what it might look like, how it might function, as well as a lot of the benefits of it, and kind of I think why humanity is kind of heading that direction and needs to in a lot of ways, for the sake of kind of sustainability as well as just kind of equality and quelling some of the economic disruption and just the dissatisfaction that a lot of people have essentially with the current system.
Okay, that's definitely interesting. Very. I've always wondered how we were going to get to the Star Trek era of economics.
That's pretty much it right there. Yep.
Yeah.
That would be kind of more the long-term goal, something like a couple of 100 years in the future, systems like that could essentially lead to a world like that. Be a long kind of transitional process.
Right.
But I think things like that are definitely possible in the long term.
Sure. Now, of course, remember this is a round table, so you two can certainly feel free to chat with each other, just like we were before the show started. while I was getting everything set up and talk to me. And this is weird because this is the first time that the guests have been able to see me at the same time as the audience, because I now have two cameras, so I no longer have an excuse to look awful. And
Very nice.
so yeah, so in beautiful 4K. Uh,
Well, you
so
look wonderful.
oh well, thank you. Oh, do stop. Okay, so we've got one guy talking about the past and another talking about the future, and an interesting combo. This is the first time I think that I've really had nonfiction writers on the show. So yay! A lot of firsts for today. Um, Okay, so yeah, so how will we get to a moneyless society, not just a cashless society? Because we're already working on that, where everything's going to electronic.
Sure,
So many
sure.
things you gotta pay electronically, and of course we have the whole cryptocurrency space out there that's trying to survive as a form of money. Um, but
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a really it's a question I get asked a lot, is how we would transition to kind of such a society.
mhm,
And let me just give you a little bit of backstory about kind of me really quick and why I wrote the book. Like, one of the main reasons why I wrote the book essentially was because that I couldn't really get access to a lot of the resources that I needed growing up. My mother actually jumped off a bridge when I was 15 years old, and
oh
I ran
goodness.
away from home. And yeah, and I got addicted to drugs and alcohol, and I've had like over 100 different jobs in the capitalist system. I've waited tables for like 7 or 8 different restaurants.
Mhm.
I've sold insurance. I've had about 15 different telemarketing jobs. Uh,
Sounds
worked at
familiar.
coffee shops. Yeah, lots and lots of different stuff, and I could never quite, settle in and find what I needed. Plus, I was just having a really hard time coping with just kind of pain and grief and everything like that. And just it made it really difficult to essentially function and survive, while trying to go to school, while trying to hold down a job, while being, just having, issues in general from, my mother's death and my
Mhm.
childhood and things like that. And I was never really able to kind of get a good foothold, essentially. And that went on for a really long time, just kind of bouncing around from job to job and state to state, trying to get like the access to the resources and, healthcare, and even just like, psychologists and things like that that I really needed. But that's essentially kind of where the transition starts, is really getting people access to the things that they need.
Mhm.
And we want to do that by developing cooperative systems, essentially, to where you don't essentially have to trade your time and your labor and your money for just the necessities of everyday life.
Mm.
We want to start creating, co-ops essentially, or kind of the mechanism that we really advocate using. By co-ops, I mean like worker co-ops are a big one, because the workers actually own the company, as opposed to,
Mhm.
just a hierarchical structure where it's one person at the top that owns everything.
Right.
In a worker co-op, you have a bunch of different people that all are, kind of equal owners and equal, have an equal say in the company. And so you benefit more. You actually get more of the profits too, and dividends, and you get more of a choice of how that company is ran and how things are distributed. And so in doing so, we want to essentially start to try to make food and water and healthcare and, maybe even things like energy and education and things like that, kind of starting to make these things free to the members of co-ops without them actually having to trade money or time or labor. And that's kind
Okay.
of where a lot of this starts, is giving people access to the things they need, you know for free, for nothing in return, essentially.
Hmm.
And it's kind of a difficult concept for a lot of people to grasp, because we're so mired in this transactional system
Right.
where, hey, if you want a house over your, head, or food from the grocery store, or water even, or electricity, you got to pay for that. You got to trade your time, energy, you got to go out and make money for these things. But we really have the technology now, we have the systems available to produce a lot of these things in abundance without much human labor at this point. It wasn't that way 50 or 100 years ago, but
Mhm.
now there's, just incredible technology in a lot of ways, especially with automation and robotics, and we can do it in more sustainable ways as well now, um, to where we really could provide an abundance of everyday necessities to the people who really need them, and it wouldn't be that far of you know a stretch or transition period, really, if we kind of focus on doing that and have that goal in mind. um,
Interesting.
it's just kind of getting people together on the same page to really start talking about how to do that, how to collaborate to where we actually can, produce these things in a more sustainable way for ourselves, essentially, like
Mhm.
even as, communities and things like that. Let's say it might start out with, you and some people in your community creating a cooperative garden or agricultural,
Mhm.
business of some sort that produces maybe one or several different types of food, and you start making a profit through that business and everything. But instead of just reinvesting the profit back into the business or putting it in your pocket and getting rich, you reinvest it back into creating the systems and that will make those things free for your community, creating an abundance of that food, or essentially.
Hmm.
And so it kind of, instead of, it's kind of a fundamental shift. Instead of taking the excess from it and kind of hoarding it to where everybody's doing that, we collectively agree to reinvest it back into these systems to give people what they need and to start creating an abundance of food, water, shelter, all these other things. And you know it's definitely possible, because there's models out there that are doing exactly that right now. They're just not very well known. Like
Mhm.
Mondragon is the biggest cooperative in the world. They have like 80,000 employees, and they have basically an entire town almost in the Basque region in Spain. But they're a technological powerhouse too. They have their own university. When the 2008-9 financial crisis hit, hardly anybody was laid off too. They just kind of shifted employees around from one place to the other where they were more needed, because everybody essentially agreed just to take a pay cut, instead of the people at the top saying, oh, let's lay off 1,000 workers or something
Mhm.
like that. So it's much more of kind of a democratically equally ran thing, where they really do invest more in the community members and the people that work for the company and the environment. um, and it's not just end all exploitative model to
Mhm.
where they're just using everything for the sake of profit and nothing else. It's kind of adds that more human and community aspect back in things.
Interesting.
And yeah, same thing. There's another town called Marinaleda in Spain. They've been run by a mayor that's been doing these principles for about the last 30 years. Like the entire town essentially is just an agricultural cooperative. And they don't have any mortgages or police force because they just don't need them. Those models have essentially been obsoleted by that, social structure that they have there.
Hmm.
And we could do the same thing if we really wanted to. We could start these cooperative models. We can own things more collectively. And I think a lot of people will find that the way of life in general is better because you actually get what you need, you
Right.
know, and it creates more community, creates more of that connection with other people too, that I think, just the current competitive, monetary system, it really kind of sucks out of people, because everybody's just so focused on trying to get an income and survive,
Mhm.
let alone get a little bit ahead, that you don't really have time to socialize with other people and talk to people in your community and develop those relationships.
Hmm.
But with this sort of model, it emphasizes that, and it actually relies on those relationships. It relies on you going and talking with your neighbors and coming to these, cooperative decisions and having these conversations and everything. So
Well, that could
so I think it's a far more fulfilling model for a lot of people too.
yeah, that could work pretty well with my leadership model. One of my day gigs is as a leadership developer. Um,
Mm,
and the model I use I call ethical leadership, and it's based on 8 actionable behaviors that are designed to bring the team and greater community together under the
mm,
leader, as opposed to the leader, the leader being an island and everybody, it's like, stay away, don't come close to me, and do what I say, and you better or I'll punish you, kind of a thing. It includes humility and controlled discipline and justice and a few and several others. Um, but uh, um, but yeah, the one thing that I'd be concerned about is how do you incentivize worker behavior? Because we
Sure.
use in traditional models we use money as a big part of that. That's like, hey,
Hmm.
you work harder, you get a bigger paycheck, kind of a thing.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
as opposed to in the government model, of course, is you survive, you do just enough work to survive
Mm.
and to not get fired, and you get a raise. Um,
Sure.
and so there's no financial incentive to do better. So basically, in those instances, I tend to teach people that that as leaders, they need to be inspirational and transformational in those kinds of environments where money's really not an incentive. But
Yeah.
what works in the moneyless society as far as
Yeah.
incentives to work?
That's that's a really valid question too. Yeah, what incentive would there be for people to work? And it's essentially it's the same sort of mechanism that money creates, which is positive reinforcement,
Mhm.
and it's part of operant conditioning and psychology, essentially just rewarding people or animals, even anything, giving them a reward of some sort when behavior that is favorable is produced, or just some sort of negative feedback when that
Mhm.
behavior, when negative behavior is there. And by reward, I mean, I'm not saying like a monetary reward in this case, but what money has done essentially
People
is it's
treats.
become both. Right, and there's a lot of different ways to do that actually, but money has kind of become this access point and a barrier to a lot of the positive reinforcement that we receive in the world. It's kind of just like this middleman essentially a lot of the time, because money buys almost everything that we need to survive, but it's also kind of a barrier to everything that we need to survive also. And when you take that away, all these other things essentially that come after money, like as money acts as a middleman for, they're still there,
Mhm.
right? So we still need water and food and shelter and electricity and community and relationships and
Right.
all these things. Um, and when we're able to provide those to ourselves on a basis without money, then that's positive reinforcement just in and of itself. And I think a lot of people don't quite get that concept that, hey, I built this machine that now automatically can supply water to our entire community for free, whether maybe that's an water, atmospheric water generator that sucks it out of thin air or something, or maybe it's a, salinity, or one of those
Desalination.
desalination,
Yeah.
yeah, one of these, a desalination plant or machine or something. But just the community progress alone, it's one way for that positive reinforcement to be received. And not only that, there's a lot of different ways just by building community and relationships, that encourage and that hit that positive reinforcement mechanism for people. When people contribute to their community, not only does the community share that progress, but people respect that individual and they
Mhm.
thank that individual, and they want to help that individual back, and some ways a lot of the time too, because it's they did the community a favor, so now we're going to do this individual a favor. And it's not saying that that has to be enforced or anything like that,
Mhm.
but people are more likely to contribute to communities when they receive some sort of positive reinforcement for
Right.
that. So maybe you built, an auto or helped build an automated garden for your community, and at the end of that, when it's all installed and in place, you have a big party or something like
Mhm.
that. And you just acknowledge those people that helped build it. Hey, thank you so much for building this community garden. If there's
Mhm.
anything we can help do for you, maybe just let us know, and we can do that. And it's a more direct fashion to these things that money actually provides too, because I mean, people kind of view money as providing, I mean, it provides so much, it's kind of hard to dissect it. But I think a lot of what people really want in the long term is free time and leisure,
Mhm.
and community relationships and friendships, and to really develop those things, and just to be happy and to have other people around and friends, things like that. And if we can eliminate the middleman to that situation a lot of time, which usually is going to be money and financial security,
Mhm.
and you actually giving people free time, freeing that time up, then just having the access to community and relationships, and then building mutual shared progress together as a
Hmm.
community is so rewarding.
Mhm.
I mean, I was on a show the other day, and this person was talking about I mean, the disaster in Florida after the hurricane in Florida, after everything was just wiped out. And you know th- everything is gone practically. Like,
Yeah.
people's cell phones aren't working, the internet service isn't working, the power is out, people's homes are leveled, and people are just walking around in a stupor, like, well, there went reality. There
Right.
went basically everything I own, and everything we had, and society as we know it. And what do people do? What do people revert back to? Do they revert back to, well, I'm cooking some hot dogs here, so that's going to be $1? Because, or even, and not even a barter system. Well, if I give you a hot dog, are you going to, give me a bag of rice in exchange for that? Or if I help you move that log out of your front yard, are you going to help me move this boat out of mine or something? People just help each other,
Right.
and that's when you remove that monetary incentive, it's nice to see people falling back to that, shared, mutual, helping one another, cooperative, social mindset. Unfortunately, disasters have to happen in order for people to get back into that mindset, because the
Yeah.
monetary system, is so prevalent and so out in the front of things. But that's kind of the systems that we envision this being, is more of a voluntary, systemically uh, operational system, rather than everything being transactional. People simply contribute when and where they please. They help the community and everybody else make progress around them, and then they all share in that, positive reinforcement and the progress that comes from doing that. And because it's a kick-ass system that everybody likes and enjoys, and because it frees up time, because it gives you food and energy and water and education and internet and healthcare and everything else, it works, and people want to keep it going. And if you start to see some cracks in the system, it's very, very likely that people are just going to say, okay, I'll take care of that because it needs to be taken care of. And we could probably keep these systems going with a relatively small amount of labor compared to the economic systems that we have now, simply because, one, of automation. We could
Mhm.
automate so many of these tasks away into oblivion, and two, there's just so many jobs that people are forced to do now that don't really contribute much to society. When you're sitting behind a desk pushing paper for an insurance company or a bank,
Mhm.
or an investment company or something like that, you're kind of not, I mean, granted, you're helping the economic system that we have right now function in the way that it has to function, and keeping it all going. And so it's a very vital part of our current economic system. But if we obsoleted trade through these mechanisms that we're talking about, that wouldn't really be necessary at all. And it doesn't really provide any direct function to us surviving in the real world. It doesn't grow food, it doesn't, get us water, it doesn't get us electricity or shelter, it doesn't really make life easier in any
Right.
way, shape, or form. But and so if we focus on the things that actually do improve our living situations and improve, our essentially eliminate a lot of unnecessary human labor, we could probably create systems like this, in a relatively short period of time, that worked really well. In a relatively short period of time, I mean maybe a few decades or something like that, to have some pretty robust cooperative systems in place that would actually really start to function well. And it would be kind of an experimental thing at first. We don't have all the answers, we don't exactly have it all pinned out on paper to say this is exactly how it would be and this is how it would work. It's up for experimentation, for people to start creating these cooperative systems, and utilizing them, and seeing where the flaws are, and working out the kinks,
Hmm.
essentially. So that's it's more of a long term kind of transitional process than something that we would just kind of flip a switch on, and it would happen overnight. So
Okay. Larry, as the ad hoc historian of our little group here, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's interesting, and certainly, while Matt is explaining it, I'm thinking, there are groups right now that I think would welcome the opportunity if they had a leader, if they had somebody like Matt that said, "No, wait a minute, you really can take this. a step further. Little groups in areas that I'm aware of that in a way function as a cooperative, but don't
Mhm.
have that that one person with a vision. We can take this further. That I think getting that message to those groups, this is my observation, would certainly be a step, a critical step. You've got people there that are already receptive to the cooperative approach to life, showing them how to, jack it up a notch.
Hmm.
Okay. Well,
Exactly.
It,
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead. Sorry,
that's
Bill.
okay.
it's just it's interesting, and I'm thinking, gee, I wonder how would I sell my book? How I gotta find someone who could the things that I pay for right now, editing, printing, etc. You know, how could we barter this? Not a bad idea.
Hmm.
We need a publishers co-op is what we need.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly. And I just kind of want to clarify something too. I hear a lot of people saying, "Well, would it be going back to like a barter system of some sort?" And I mean, it might. I think in a transitional period, you would probably still have to utilize, wages and currency and kind of more normal job structures and, through the cooperatives and things like that. In the long term, it would really kind of be the goal to obsolete those mechanisms, so you don't have to trade
Right.
anymore, essentially. So those things are kind of mostly produced through automated means, and and so it's not really necessary for people to say, okay, well, I need to trade something or I need to go make money in order to do this or that. And so, and like I said, it'd be a transitional thing, probably, start out still kind of more on the wage slash labor thing. But in the long term goal is to just make it to where trade isn't necessary anymore. And if you do want a book or something like that, it's either available at your library for you to borrow, or you can maybe order one off of something similar to Amazon where they have like print on demand services now. Like, because I just wrote a book recently too, obviously the Moneyless Society book, but that's what they do with mine. Whenever somebody orders one, they just press print. They don't even have copies sitting there, ready to go. They just literally print the book as it's ordered,
Wow.
Right.
and then send it out now. And I envision a lot of the systems in the future kind of being utilized, like that Amazon and businesses similar to like that have developed now, because there is a lot of lessons to be learned, especially as far as like distribution and automation and just kind of ease of use for consumers and things like that. I mean, essentially, if we could do the same things with like grocery stores and whatnot, where you could just go online, say, "Oh, I want a head of lettuce and a head of celery, and this a block of cheese or something," and that could trigger, you know, a robot in your local automated garden or whatever, or greenhouse or something like that, to go and cut off a head of celery for you. And then a lot of with whatever else you need, or if there's some other products or something, it could be delivered, and those supply chains could also be automated for the most part as well. We have robots now that can plant gardens, that can harvest food, that can package things, and there's nothing stopping us from making those systems really more of like a user controlled sort of thing, as opposed to it being the decision of the head of a company, or their manufacturing or distribution department or something like that. We just simply say, okay, well, if this many heads of lettuce were ordered, then we know we need to plant this money next month in order to satisfy that demand. And it's all done through a computer also, that kind of estimates these things and says, okay, well, from current usage, we can extrapolate future use estimates, and so on and so forth, and things of that nature. So
Right, right. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically sounding like if you contribute to the co-op or society, um, then basically that plugs you in to the benefits of the co-op.
yeah, I wouldn't even say you have to contribute to receive the benefits. And again, let me emphasize, the transitional systems that we're talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, aren't the same as, what it might evolve to in 50 or 100 or a couple hundred years in the future. So
Right.
in the short term, like if we create cooperatives that are really geared and heading this direction, it probably will be more of like kind of an exclusive member type basis sort of thing. And we're going to have people that are really kind of on board with these ideas and like, yes, we want to build these things. We want to, create communities and we want to create these automated systems. But in the longer term, we would like it to be to where people can start to join these co-ops and they don't have to contribute. They don't have to sell their time or trade their time or money or labor or anything to get food and
Right. Right.
water and healthcare, things like that. That's the ultimate
Well,
goal.
I don't mean
So it would, like I said, be kind of more of a transitional thing
right.
too,
I don't
So
mean
go ahead, sorry.
in a bartery kind of a way. Just because
Right.
it's like if as a podcaster I'm contributing to society, then I should certainly be plugged into the benefits of that society, regardless of how much I contribute. Just the fact that I am an active part of that society. As opposed to just wandering into the society and give me food, give me shelter. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
And I agree, and there will, and like I said, I think there will be a certain point, where that sort of society or community is large enough and networked enough and robust enough to where it can do exactly that, to where it can say, okay, somebody off the street, who can't really contribute anything at
right,
all, we're still going to give you food and water and shelter just
right.
simply because you need it.
Oh yeah, we gotta
That's
take care
that's
of
the
those who
ultimate
can't take care of
goal.
themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the ultimate goal. It's more in the shorter term. I mean, yeah, it would kind of be more probably, in the short, immediate term, it would be more on the basis of like, okay, yes, can you help? Can you help us reach these goals that we're looking to build, through these co-ops and communities and kind of be more of a selective basis as far as, who is exactly helping out, just really kind of based on how much, they really can contribute and how dedicated they are to these
Mhm.
sorts of causes. But yeah, I mean, like you said, in the long run, we do want to be able to provide everybody who needs it,
Right.
without them really contributing or having to be like a member
Hmm.
or something like that. We simply, you know, in the long term, we believe that everybody at least deserves the dignity of having, food, water, shelter, a bed, clothing, the
Right.
necessities of life, and given a fighting chance to at least just be happy and, be a part of society, rather than just saying like, well, if you can't contribute something right off the bat, then we're not gonna give
No,
you
no.
anything. It's kind of like which comes first, the chicken or
Right.
the egg sort of thing sometimes, I think. But on the other hand, we don't really want to make it, mandatory in the long run either. So even if somebody does come on and we were giving them food, water, shelter, housing, and things like that, we don't want to have to turn around and say, okay, well, since we gave you all of this, it's been 2 months now and you haven't really done anything. Maybe this person needs a good 6 months off just to rest and recuperate and, feel
Sure.
good about, where they are in life and things like that. Who knows? And another common question, I guess, what about slackers and
Hmm.
things like that? And I mean, it's a valid question, and again, that would probably depend on where we are in the system in that transitional
Right.
period. Do we have enough of that infrastructure? Is it robust enough to take care of people who aren't really contributing? And that's kind of really going to be on like a case by case and
Hmm.
situation by
Well,
situation basis, and
I
exactly
would
where they
think
are.
a system like this might allow people the opportunity to contribute more in the ways that they feel good about contributing. You know,
Exactly.
it's like, so yeah,
100%.
you were a slacker because you couldn't do something that was satisfying to you. Some kind of work. I
Hmm.
mean, that makes you happy. I mean, I do. It's funny you mentioned doing insurance earlier. I also have a small insurance business that I'm working on doing final expense insurance.
Mm.
But yeah, it's like I've got so many day jobs. I'm hoping something will pop up that will actually support me. Uh, but
Mm.
yeah, and but insurance doesn't. I mean, I the part of it that, it's like I know I'm helping people, take care of their needs, their financial needs and the financial needs of their families, is important to
Mm-hmm.
me. But it's not the thing that makes me happiest. That would be doing the
Yeah.
podcasts. I love doing the podcasts, and I love doing leadership development. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
those are things that really make me happy. But so far, they're making me the lead. Actually, right now, the podcast thing is doing pretty well. I've got a few sponsors. I actually one of my businesses. I've set up an ad for my business to run during the podcast that I haven't actually run yet. I keep forgetting to run the ad, but yeah, I have
I know how
a
that
small
goes.
CRM business for people who want to expand their business online and make more of their online presence. Um, but uh, um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, and yeah, I can't.
Yeah, no, I could totally second that too as far as the insurance stuff. I was selling life
Mhm.
insurance and health insurance for several years. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I made some decent money doing it, but it was kind of always a struggle for me just because it wasn't something that I was really
Yeah,
into, and I kind of had it was something I just kind of had to force myself doing it. And I was happy that I was able to help, people out with their health insurance
yeah,
and their life insurance and stuff like
it's
that. But
important stuff.
on the other hand, it was just kind of like this nagging, yeah, it's just kind of like this nagging thing. I'm like, not really doing what, brings me the most
Yeah,
joy in life. I'm just kind of doing this to get by and pay the bills and stuff. And I wasn't really too surprised that I could never really get behind it 100% like I do with this sort of work,
right.
with trying to create these new sort of systems. Because this to me it's hardly even work anymore. I really enjoy talking about this subject and trying to help people kind of move in this direction and just getting that message out there in general, and this is something I do without even getting paid for, most of the time now. And but yeah, and so I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that too, as far as just people being able to contribute in the ways that they want to contribute. And I think that's kind of something that a lot of people, um they don't they conflate these sorts of things with like being told
Hmm.
what to do, being told they have to work, being told that you have to work in this specific type of job, or follow this sort of career path. And I don't think that it would work very well if you tried to do that
Right.
sort of stuff, because you would be forcing people in these boxes that they don't really want to be forced into. And what I advocate, as well as our organization, is just giving people that
Hmm.
autonomy, and that's the same sort of freedom that we have here in the United States, liberty and freedom to do what you want, to pursue what you want, to think, the things that you want, to hold your, specific beliefs that you
Right.
want, as long as you're not doing harm directly to
Hmm.
somebody else, or some valuable environment or resource or
Right.
something like that. I think there's reasonable limits to all that sort of stuff, to where you're actually harming other people. But on the other hand, I think just letting people have that autonomy and that freedom to contribute how they want, when they want, is a huge part of it. And when you let people just kind of have their autonomy in that regard and contribute, people end up thriving, when they have what they need to survive, and then you give them an opportunity to contribute, and you give them all the resources that they need to do that. You're talking now, somebody's going to really be able to contribute in a way they want to contribute, and they're probably going to be very fulfilled in doing so, you know even if they don't receive a ton of positive feedback, in the form of mansions or
Hmm.
houses or cars and things like it. And it can be, other types of positive feedback as well, like I said, the shared development in the community and relationships, and a party on the weekends, and I mean, things like that end up going, pretty far, especially when you when you can hang around a lot of people and just develop those relationships and experience that community and belonging, enjoy and share that with other people. And I think those are the experiences that are really valuable to people a lot of the time. And the more we can create and cultivate those experiences, then the more people are going to be drawn towards these types of systems, and really be enthusiastic about it as well,
Okay.
you know and so I think that's a big part of it right
Okay.
there.
Cool. Well.
So, there would be a need for a podcaster or a writer to provide the communications within the community.
Mhm.
and
Hmm.
provide it just because that's what they enjoy doing,
Exactly.
you know, and they would provide that, and the positive reward would be knowing that you have done what you enjoy doing, and that people enjoy, uh, appreciate whatever what you have done,
No.
and, and it would be
Absolutely.
simple. It would be
Hmm.
simple. There's going to be a need for communications to sell the whole concept.
Mhm.
As it
Yep.
evolves, the communications would be very important.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I would think that authors and podcasters and whatnot would kind of blend into in many ways would it blend into the education system, where it's like because you know that because of all the online presences, you've got schools are online. You can learn. You can go to different schools. You can go to different Udemy and other resources like that.
Hmm.
And universities and colleges and whatnot all have their stuff online. Both and coaches could have
Hmm.
their videos online on demand and live, and and of course authors and podcasters also blend into entertainment, and so we make a pretty good pretty good part of the contributing part of that society. So yeah, I could definitely see that. Matt, your website is moneylesssociety.book.com, correct?
Yep.
Correct.
Yeah, that's the
Yay.
website.
That's the
Yeah, that's
website.
the website for the book in particular, and then there's also just moneylesssociety.com for just the regular website and
Okay.
the organization in general.
Okay, cool. Moneyless Society and moneylesssociety.book.com. I'm sure you can get to one
You
from
got
the
it.
other. Uh,
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
so,
If
but
you go to moneylesssociety.com, there's a link to the book one, but I don't know
okay.
if there's actually a link the other way around. So
Yeah, I don't
if
see one
if there's
on
not,
on the book.
that we'll have to put that one in there.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks for pointing that out.
you need to do that. Yeah, I don't see oh wait a minute.
That's a
There at
There
the
might
bottom
be.
there's
I'm not
website
really
for
100%
resources. Let's
sure.
see.
That might be it.
Yep,
If there's not,
there
if
is
there's
a
not, we
link
should definitely
all the
put
way
one.
at the bottom.
Okay. Well, good to know. I'll have to make that a little more prominent then.
Yeah, yeah, but nice website, very pretty.
Thanks. I appreciate
Um,
that.
yeah, down at the bottom, there's links for the website, the podcast, and the social on Moneyless Society book. But you can also find everything on moneylesssociety.com. Um, and all.
You got it.
Let's see, we've kind of been focused on your stuff, Matt.
Yeah,
And I
I
feel
want to
like
hear
I'm
more about
leaving.
Larry and his book. So
Yeah, yeah, Larry Jorgensen and Great Lakes Shipwreck. And your website is shipwreckedandrescued.com. Um,
Right.
and yeah, I got it. Yeah, I'm opening it up right now. Um, yeah, yeah, I was looking at some of your material. What got you into? Now I know you live in Louisiana during the cooler months, and then when it gets hot, you move up to northern Wisconsin. Go Pack! And sorry, I grew up in a military family, and the idea of an NFL team that could never leave their hometown was just appealing to me for some reason. So I became a Packers fan, even
Well,
though I've never lived in Wisconsin, never been to Green Bay. Uh,
I was in Green Bay working for a television station when Vince Lombardi was coach.
wow.
And, and if we had hours, I could tell you Lombardi's stories. But
nice.
it is a very unique situation with a town. Again, it's a community thing there, Matt. You know, a town that is so engrossed with a project called the Packers. You know, when it snows, you've got an outdoor arena there, and when it snows, they get on communications, and they say we need community out here to clean the snow off of the seats, and the community rallies to the cause because it's the packers, it's their packers, and they go out there and they shovel the snow off the seats. They the feeling of doing for that wonderful community thing known as the Green Bay Packers is their reward. And it
Hmm.
happens all the time.
Right. Absolutely.
That
And
could.
another thing, interesting thing I heard about the Packers, there is I think they're actually more of a collectively owned
Right.
team as well. Like their ownership
Well,
model is kind of a little more along those lines.
Yeah.
it is and it isn't. I mean, the stock is held by people throughout the community, but the
Mm.
fact of the matter is the stock isn't worth anything.
Right.
If
Right. Right.
if the Packers were ever to disband, the assets are dedicated. I think it's the VFW, or they're dedicated to community projects. You know,
Hmm.
I
so
didn't know that.
um,
Right. Right.
but
Oh,
it
interesting.
but it's you know, to have season tickets. You know, when there's a case of a divorce going on, there is more battle over who gets the tickets than
Right.
any who gets who gets the
Totally.
house, or who gets the tickets. You know, so yeah,
That's funny.
there's a strong community up there. I guess you could call it Packer community.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
Yeah,
and
it
Absolutely.
dawns on me that that could in part be a model for incentivizing better work is ownership. Um, people consider themselves to be owners of the co-op farm and the co-op grocery store and the co-op gas station and all that stuff. That could be an incentive in and of itself for people to work hard and do the extra things that might be necessary to make those things work in a
yeah,
moneyless society. Um, which
well, it was
I could that's easy to
those years,
understand.
it was those years in Green Bay at the TV station that really introduced me to Upper Michigan,
Hmm.
and that became my area of expertise. We covered Upper Michigan, and in doing that, I really fell in love with the area. And to this day, it is my favorite place to go hide in the summer. Is in Upper Michigan.
Oh,
That's
nice.
what led to the story of
Yeah.
the shipwreck and rescued. And the rescued part is
Hmm.
extremely important because there has never ever been of 6,000 wrecks on the Great Lakes. There's never been another rescue like this one,
Hmm.
and it's all because the ship was carrying 240 brand new Chryslers, brand new as in 1926. Okay,
Yeah.
and they were headed from Detroit to Duluth for waiting, dealers and so forth. And the ship got wrecked on a reef off of what is known as the Keweenaw Peninsula. If you look at the map, it's that little piece of land that reaches into Lake Superior. Uh, that just it's almost a world on itself. For example, in the wintertime, it's not uncommon for them to get 300 inches of snow. You know,
Wow.
Wow.
so anyhow, it
Crazy.
wrecks on a reef. The first thing that we deal with in the book is what about the crew? There's 23 crewmen on here. Some of them from Detroit almost acted as if they were on a cruise. They had loafers on, whatever, you know. And next thing, they get a lifeboat. They get to shore, totally unprepared for the challenge that's to await them, which is 4 foot deep snow, zero temperatures, blowing snow, etc. And they're lost. They are totally lost. There's no communications. Nobody even knows the boat has crashed. So the big mistake is the captain thought that they had sailed west of this little town called Copper Harbor.
Hmm.
So when they get off the boat and finally get to shore, they think, boy, if we could get to Copper Harbor, we could probably find some place to get some shelter, food. So they're thinking they're west. So they start walking east. But the fact of the matter is they're already east. And they walk for a long time, walk, flounder in this snow until they realize they're going the wrong way. So they start working their way back. Long story how they got rescued. It was another ship that wrecked about the same time. And the Coast Guard captain and the rescue boat goes out to save that crew, and they find this crew, and ultimately get them in and get them saved. But now we have a crew that's been saved, and an abandoned, trashed boat. The boat is declared a loss,
Hmm.
sitting on a reef with 200 and some cars on it, and they happen to be Chryslers. And 1926, 27 models. Walter Chrysler says, they're there. I want them back. Okay. So they they hire a salvage company out of Duluth, come up with a plan. The plan is wait until the water freezes around that reef. So they wait a couple months, the water finally freezes. They are able to drive the cars off of the boat. They build a ramp, get the cars off onto the reef, and ultimately, because the ice is now frozen around the reef, they were able to use that ice to get onto the shore of Lake Superior and drive these cars into this little bitty town of Copper Harbor. So in the book, and we've got some fantastic, unbelievable historic photos in that book. Reason being, the Coast Guard captain was an amateur photographer. And we got access to a lot of the photos he took, and then there are other photos available. But nevertheless, they finally get the cars to the town of Copper Harbor. So then, now what are you going to do with them? You've got maybe 30, 36 people living in this little town of Copper Harbor, and you've got 200 and some brand new cars there. Obviously, you got to do something with them. Well, Copper Harbor is about 40 miles to the nearest railroad depot, which is a little town called Calumet.
Right.
Normally, being the summer up there, there's a road. In the wintertime, there is no road. There's snow as deep as 7 feet high on that, what would have been the road. So here are these cars. They need to get them from Copper Harbor to Calumet, about 40 miles. So again, in the book, we go into how was that accomplished? Well, besides the 2 month ordeal to get them off the boat, then how do you get the cars to the town where the railroad is?
Mhm.
And the plowing of the roads, opening the roads, getting enough people to drive the cars down the road, to get them on the train. That that's a whole nother issue. See, and what we've got, you talk about a community, Matt, that whole
Mhm.
peninsula becomes a community of support for this mission to
Right.
save and the cars. You
Hmm.
know,
A shared
one
purpose, right?
one person, a dozen people couldn't have done it. It
Yeah.
took, it literally took that hundreds of people in that peninsula to make it happen.
Wow.
So they
Hmm.
finally do get the cars to Calumet. Um, Interesting sidelight. By the way, the crew, which almost froze to death, they finally got to a hospital either by sleigh or a guy had a car that had a snowmobile track on it. They experimented with them in those days, but they got the crew finally to the hospital. Some of them were bad shape. We were there for a couple of months.
Wow.
So, so anyhow, we get the cars to Calumet. Now, how do you get them there? Well, the salvage company decided we'll pay $5 a head for anybody who will drive that car from Copper Harbor to Calumet.
Mm.
Okay. All right. So a lot of kids ditched school that day to pick up the class five. But now, if you think about it, you're driving down this road all alone on a brand new Chrysler, and you're going to get $5. But you got a brand new Chrysler. Are, there were, as they get closer to Calumet, some side roads. And, and the local story is that there were a few cars that didn't make it all the
Yeah.
way.
I
Okay.
was gonna say,
We
I bet they didn't all
found
make it. Yeah.
one. That car was owned by the same family up there for 60 some years.
Wow.
The car sits today in the Lighthouse Museum at
Hmm.
Eagle Harbor on Lake Superior. The car has over 200,000 miles on it.
Wow.
The guy that had it loved it. He drove it in parades. He drove any excuse he had. He drove the thing. He went through, they do the annual or whatever it is inspection, safety inspection. He took it through that, and the old guy from the Detroit Motor Vehicle Group, whatever it was, said he'd never seen a vehicle with that many miles and that old in his inspection. Ultimately, the car finally got sold to the museum. And so it sits in the museum. And if you go see it, they will show you an axe mark on the car where the ice was cut away to get the car off the boat.
Wow.
The pictures,
Wow.
the pictures in the book really tell the story of rescuing those cars. It's just it's a great. But how did we come across that crazy story? You hear about the Edmund Fitzgerald and all these ships.
Yeah, I was thinking of that, but but of course you don't have a Gordon Lightfoot song to make
No,
yours
no, I
popular.
mean, well, and the thing is, we do have a happy ending. I talked to a diver who has gone down to the Edmund Fitz,
Yeah.
and it's pretty sad what's down there. But so nevertheless, how did we find this story? It's not. There's a big map that shows all the shipwrecks in the Great Lakes.
Mhm.
All of them are on there. It's not on there.
Wow.
I found it. I had picked up. I was up there 3 years ago. Picked up a little tourist brochure, and there was one picture in there, and about a paragraph and a half that said, "Oh, by the way, this thing happened up here."
Hmm.
Thing. Oh, I'm an old news dog. I said, "This is not a thing. It's a heck of a story," and that's what set me out to get all the details, to get it all put together, and to do the book. It is truly, and the neat thing about it, I thought I was writing a shipwreck book, which I was. But you know what? I am getting as much response from vintage car collectors.
Hmm.
The book is on sale in gift stores at vintage car museums.
Wow.
Why? Because we're talking about a bunch of Chryslers that got saved. It, the whole thing is it's amazing the reception the book has gotten, and I'm glad I did it. It's one of these, you feel good. Podcasts and writers and all that, you do it because it feels good to do it. Painters paint, writers write. We hope somebody's paying attention. And, and the reward, yeah, it's nice to sell the book, but the real reward is when a guy called me up a couple of weeks ago and he said, "Do you know your book has been featured a lengthy article in USA Today?" I said, "Really?" And it was.
Wow.
You know, that's the reward. That's not money.
Yeah. Now, of
That's
course,
awesome.
if you're interested in the book, you can find it at shipwreckedandrescued.com. It's and I was scrolling down, and this isn't the first book you've written. Now, is it?
No, I'm. You hear the story about the old Dalmatian that used to ride on the fire truck, got too old, but when the bell went off, he still wanted to
Yeah.
go. Well, that happens to old news dogs too. You know, and the only thing I can write is nonfiction, and I write it like a newsman would.
Okay.
You go after the facts, man. Get the facts, get the photos, put the whole thing together. and usually you come out with a pretty good story. That one of the other books that you probably saw referenced down there, I did two. I did a book and I did a sequel called The Coca-Cola
Yep.
Trail.
Hmm.
No, it's not about Atlanta, Georgia. It's about all these places all over the United States where Coca-Cola really was created.
Mm.
For
Hmm.
example, Vicksburg, Mississippi was really the first place they bottled Coca-Cola, not Atlanta, Georgia. In
Hmm.
fact, the book will tell you why, and the book also tells you that Coca-Cola initially thought bottling was a dumb idea. They were
Huh.
interested in selling the syrup,
Hmm.
and it took two attorneys from Chattanooga to convince Asa Candler, who owned Coca-Cola syrup,
Hmm.
that they should be allowed to bottle it.
Hmm.
He didn't
You-
believe in that. He thought that was a dumb, quote him, that's a dumb idea. It's a back alley thing, this bottling. And they finally convinced him that they could do it and it would be good. He sold them. You talk
Hmm.
about a bargain, guys. He sold them the rights to bottle, exclusive
Hmm.
rights to bottle Coca Cola throughout the United States, except Mississippi, for a
Hmm.
dollar. $1.
Wow.
He sold, and the story is he never bothered to collect the dollar. He just wanted to get them out of his life.
Wow.
He sent them back to Chattanooga. And, you know, the story, this is how the story evolves. They get back to Chattanooga, they got the rights to bottle everywhere in the United States. They got $1,500. How are we going to do this? You know, they set up a little bottling thing, and that doesn't work. I mean, that's not the answer. And then, you know, the light goes on. We got the rights. We're going to cut up the country into pieces and we're going to sell franchises, you
Mhm.
Hmm.
know? Or they didn't call them franchises in the territories,
Right.
okay?
Hmm.
That is what the book is about. The
Hmm.
people that said, that's not a bad idea.
Interesting.
We'll give you $1,500. Can we bottle Coca Cola in Paducah? Yeah, sure. You get 50 miles around Paducah. Bottle Coca Cola. Now, the trick to this thing, besides collecting the money to sell them 50 miles of Paducah, they had to, a bottler obviously had to use Coca Cola syrup
Right.
Hmm.
when he created the product. Okay. Well, every time that bottler would order syrup from Atlanta, the two guys in Chattanooga got a commission.
Hmm.
Okay. And they got extremely wealthy between selling territory and making commissions on Coca-Cola syrup. They did rather well for themselves for that $1 investment, you know.
Hmm.
That's
I
what
bet.
the book basically, and we're getting way off of why you wanted me here, but you can't shut me up. The book basically is where can you, we call it the Coca-Cola Trail.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Where can you go and see, touch, feel something that was Coca-Cola? Maybe it's an old plant that is now a
Hmm.
museum, you know, or whatever. Not, don't tell me it's an office full of lawyers. It's a place where you can go and go in and participate or whatever.
Hmm.
Or it's a restored Coca-Cola mural over the Kalamazoo River, whatever it might be. That's what the book's about. I had
Interesting.
people email me and say I'm planning my vacation around several stops. Did you?
So were they there was no real like soda bottled soda industry before
Oh
that
yeah,
was I mean
yeah, there
there
was.
was there was okay.
Oh, yeah, you
They-
had, in fact, for Michigan folks, you had Verner's, that great
okay.
ginger ale,
Mm.
and yeah, and what they were bottling was, you know, sarsaparilla
Hmm.
and lemon, and you know, it was carbonated water in whatever bottle you could find,
Right.
and so a lot of the people that picked up Coca-Cola were already bottlers. Some of them
Hmm.
weren't, but
I
some of them
see.
were bottlers that were making orange, lemon, whatever, you know,
I
and
see. Gotcha.
they added it cautiously. Added it. One of the favorite stories is that if a bottler would take on Coca-Cola and one of his customers would order a case of mixed sodas, he'd slip a couple Coca-Colas in there, to get him to try it.
Mhm.
And the next thing you know, he's selling cases of Coca-Cola,
Wow.
Huh.
So,
Interesting.
and there's all kinds of history about how the bottle, the iconic Coca-Cola bottle, we tell that story. Um, it's a fascinating history for the undoubtedly the world's best known brand. I,
Interesting. I have
I
I have another question for you too. Is that when there was still was there cocaine in it, or is that just a myth that there was
you know how
actually
many
cocaine
interviews I get asked that.
in it?
Here's the story of the cocaine. The
What's that? I'm sorry.
the Coca-Cola formula is made from the cola nut and
Mm,
the coca leaf. The leaf is not processed for Coca-Cola the way it's processed for cocaine.
mm,
Because it comes from the Coca-Cola leaf, initially there was a slight hint of whatever they could detect cocaine in it. Okay.
mm,
It got to be such a hassle for
mm.
Asa Candler that he spent thousands and thousands of dollars to get pharmacists, whoever, chemists, whoever, to remove any taste, any hint of anything that would be cocaine in that, because
Huh.
it just people would say, "Oh, it's got cocaine, that's why you drink it." No, it had the coca leaf processed in a different manner, but
Huh.
consequently, it took some of that flavor, that trait with it.
Yeah. Would it did it still hype you up like caffeine or like cocaine does, or was it just more for the taste, or do you know if
Well,
like people were actually getting addicted to it, or?
I know people that to this day are addicted to
Well,
coca.
yeah, that's true. They get addicted to it now anyway, so.
Yeah, what can you blame it on? I don't know. It's ironic when I started writing these books, um, my Coca-Cola consumption might have been a six pack a year. Uh, I couldn't relate to that. Although since then, I have become enamored with a product they've got. It's a Coca-Cola coffee.
Oh
Maybe you've
yeah, I've
seen
seen
it.
the Coca-Cola coffee. I haven't tried it yet.
I haven't tried that
Yeah,
yet.
I like it. That's good. But other than that, I've never consumed much Coca Cola.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
not a huge soda drinker myself
I
either.
try.
the bottle, the bottle. We talk about an investment. When they had the competition to determine what was going to be the Coca Cola bottle, and there were six bottle makers that all brought bottles in, and ultimately they decided on the one that we all know now. The bubble type bottle.
Yeah.
Well, each bottler brought five of their prototypes in. And after they decided on the one that was made by the Root Glass Company in Terre Haute, the Coca-Cola told them all these bottles should be destroyed except one from the winner that sits today in the Coca-Cola archives.
Hmm.
Well, one more escaped. One of the guys who helped design it was able to get one out of there. And that bottle stayed in that family for decades.
Huh.
About 3 years ago, at an
God
estate
bless you.
Thank
auction,
you.
that bottle came up for sale in California. Okay.
Hmm.
It sold for over $150,000. And
Wow.
they knew it was that bottle because on the bottom it said 1905.
Wow.
Coke never started using that bottle until 1906. It
Huh.
was, and then it was the family. So I mean, it all connected. It was the bottle that escaped from the judging.
Interesting.
Remember when we used to pick them up as kids for 2 cents, right? You get enough bottles, you could go to the store buy some candy. I don't.
Totally.
So
Wow. Little pieces of history. It's
yeah,
fascinating.
it was fun to write that. And that book, I wrote that book what 4 years ago.
Hmm.
It is still selling like crazy. We're sitting there doing an interview. I had a guy from Dubai email me and said, have the largest, most powerful radio station in Dubai, and I want to interview you. I emailed
That's
him back,
awesome.
and I said, why? He said, the soccer stadium over here is sponsored by Coca-Cola. Everybody loves Coca-Cola. I did a half hour with a guy in Dubai.
Wow.
Coca-Cola, the
Nice.
magic of the name. You know.
Right. It's a worldwide
It
brand,
is
that's for
indeed.
sure.
Yeah, you ever been to? I know there's one in Vegas, like a Coca-Cola experience kind of a thing where you can go and you can sample Coca-Cola products from around the world or other versions of Coke, and yeah, it's really interesting. I'll put it that way. There were a couple that I couldn't stand. I couldn't finish the entire tasting glass. But
Interesting.
yeah, yeah, it was pretty fun
Wild.
though to see different.
I didn't know there were different versions of Coke
Yeah,
around the world. That makes sense though, I guess, kind of catering to different regions and their
right.
taste and whatnot.
Well, and the other things that Coca-Cola is involved in, the other beverages and other products. You go to the grocery store and pick up a gallon of Fairlife milk.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? It's owned by
Right.
Coca-Cola. You know,
Huh.
and
Yeah.
everybody in California knows about Minute Maid orange juice.
Yep.
hmm
Owned by Coca-Cola.
Yep.
And on and on and on and on. That's why Coca-Cola is able to do the things they do. You talk to Warren Buffett, he wouldn't part with a share of Coca-Cola stock if you held a gun to
Yep.
his head. You know, it's
Mm.
just they have become not only recognized worldwide by the consumers, but by investors. Solid company, good ideas, good growth, amazing. You
Makes
know.
sense.
No.
Can't blame them.
I don't know how much time we got, but I can tell you a Coca-Cola story. You remember that when they came out with you shut me off if you want to, the new Coke?
Yeah, I remember the new Coke.
Remember the well, that
Oh
was
yeah.
all caused because of Pepsi.
Mm.
The Pepsi was doing this thing called the Pepsi Challenge.
Right. Right.
And you'd set these two different glasses, not knowing what's in them, and you would say, what's your favorite? People were picking Pepsi, and it was driving Coca-Cola crazy. So they went great lengths to figure it out, and they found out people were picking Pepsi because it was sweeter. So if you get a little sip of two things and one is sweeter, chances are you're going to say, yeah, I like that one. That's good. What is that? No, it's Pepsi. But if you're going to drink the whole can, bottle, whatever, Coca-Cola goes down a lot better in a can full, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Coca-Cola, the powers that be of this multi-billion-dollar company didn't understand what was happening. And they reformulated Coca-Cola to make the new Coca-Cola, make it sweeter, and boy, now we got them. In doing the book, I would talk to Coca-Cola distributors, bottlers, that told me their guys, when they took Coca-Cola to the stores, little old ladies would come up and threaten them. If you don't bring my Coca-Cola back, you're going to get it. How many millions of dollars?
Wow.
How many years for Coca-Cola to promote a product that people didn't want?
Yeah.
hmm
You know,
Yeah,
they
that
thought,
one backfired right in their faces, didn't it?
sure did, and they got Pepsi to thank for it.
Yeah, yeah. So many businesses have made those kinds of mistakes where they think the customers want something, and so yeah, it's like but they're misunderstanding what it is that the customers want. Yeah, and yeah, it's funny how that works sometimes, but yeah, some have gone down in flames over it. What was the who was it bought? I think it was somebody bought was it Snapple?
Mm.
Yeah.
No, shoot, now I don't remember, but they bought the they bought this company thinking that that they'd be getting a bargain on it, and and it turned out that because the market was so flooded that nobody really wanted more of this product. Maybe it was an energy drink. I don't know. Though that's definitely a flooded market, but I'd have to look that up to remember.
It was
In the
Snapple,
It was
beverage
Snapple.
because they bought the company, these people, and they brought it back down that it was losing money,
Uh
and the people from Snapple bought it back again and then brought it back up.
huh.
Yeah, that's what I heard about Snapple.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah, because
Interesting.
yeah, you gotta understand what the market's actually doing. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely one of the successes of the capitalist system is it tends to the invisible hand, you know, the invisible hand tends to tell you what the customers actually want, and if you don't pay attention to it the right way, then you're going to go out of business, and if you do pay attention to it the right way, you'll be a success. But
hmm Well, and that's the You kind of touched on something that I talk about in my book a little bit too, is the what's called like a crisis of overproduction,
mhm,
and and it's kind of funny because a lot of the economic crises that we experience are kind of because of a bunch of people racing to get into some sort of industry or business that's
mhm,
being very profitable at that moment,
right,
and then you have an overproduction, you have an overabundance of products or people or businesses
mhm,
that are coming into that industry eventually because everybody's racing to get in the doors, and then all of a sudden there's way too much product or service or whatever it is. Like it happened with the dot-com industry, it
yeah,
happened with kind of housing and the 2007 and 8 crisis, um, and other things, just essentially overproduction. And all of a sudden, people realize that they're not going to be able to sell that product for as much as they invested, to
mhm,
produce that product. Because there's just so much of it now. There's an overabundance of it, which obviously
yeah,
drives prices down because people have to compete then at that point. And
mhm,
then there's a race for the exits, to get
right,
out of it all of a sudden.
exactly.
And then it just crashes. And that's kind of the one of the cycles that we see over and over again in our economy. And
yeah.
it's kind of this game of musical chairs, as like who can weather the storm or who can get out and make a buck in the process of doing so. And it's just this kind of
Mhm.
interesting repeating process that
Yeah,
we
well,
see
it's
there.
so many investors are looking at the history of something instead of at the future.
Hmm.
You know, it's like, oh, everybody's making money doing plastics, my boy. Um, and
Yeah.
but
Oh.
they're looking at the history of something, even though it's very recent history, and not at the next thing. Which
Hmm.
is also true, unfortunately, of kids going into college for the first time. They have to look at, it's like, okay, I've graduated high school, it's time to go to college. I'm going to study this. And
Mm.
because this is a big thing, everybody's getting hired. And it turns out 4 years later, nobody's
Yeah.
hiring.
Yep.
That major anymore. And
Hmm.
and so it's people aren't looking at the future, they're looking at the past.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And
you
that
know
and that delay has a lot to do with it too, especially even like in situations where it takes time for those results to manifest,
mhm,
like the housing industry is another example of that, because the
yeah,
demand today isn't the same demand that there's going to be in 6 months or a year down the road or 2
right,
years down the road, but that may be how long it takes to see some of these projects through from beginning
mhm,
to completion. And
yeah,
so you may be experiencing one condition starting these projects, but by the time the project is actually finished, it could be a completely different economic scenario,
yeah,
and you could be left holding the bag. It
yeah,
happens all too often.
yeah. That's the risk you take when you set out on a project.
Yep.
So yeah, but
Like Mr. Edsel,
yes,
Mr.
Mhm.
Mr. Edsel Ford, right?
Yeah.
Expanding the line when everybody else is contracting.
right,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah. You need a little
Yeah.
bit more prognostication than
Yep. Absolutely. And it's hard. It's hard. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. It's kind
mhm,
of roll of the dice a lot of the time.
pretty much.
Sometimes you have a hunch and it's completely wrong.
Yeah.
God knows I've done that once or twice.
Oh yeah. Yeah, me too. Uh,
Uh, if
yeah.
we had $1 for every time, right?
Oh, that reminds me. Speaking of hunches, I should run my my commercial. Okay, hold on.
Oh,
Let
there
me
you
see
go.
if this works. Yeah, let me run my commercial here. Okay, this is for Automate You. Going ahead and attention, entrepreneurs! Automate You is the all-in-one platform that will give you the tools, support, and resources you need to succeed with your business. With our all-in-one marketing and sales platform, you will be able to keep your tools in one place while saving a fortune and streamline your entire delivery process so you can focus on keeping your clients happy. Get your 14-day free trial at https:// Automate You, that's YOU.co. AutomateYou.co. Yay!
Nice commercial.
Okay. I
like
finally
it.
ran it.
There you go. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, Automate You, Automate YOU is a primarily a CRM and website design platform where you can do it all yourself. It's real easy, and we also have other options where done with you and done for you and all that stuff. But yeah, a lot of great tools. So head over to automateyou.co. But
That's
okay,
cool.
now back
Sounds
to
like
the show.
something that I was gonna say. It sounds like something that I might be utilized with, like outreach to people or something
Oh, cool.
as well, and in general.
Yeah, we'll
It,
set up a chat.
yeah, for sure. That'd be great.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Woohoo!
Yay!
Yay! But yeah, that's the newest project. Yeah, we've had a few clients, and it's really kind of exciting. I've actually learned how to design a website with coding and everything.
Wow, that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
I know how to use WordPress, but coding is
Yeah,
beyond me.
yeah.
So kudos to you if you figured that out.
Just a
Because
little
that's
bit,
I tried to.
not a lot of coding, but I figured out enough coding to be able to change the colors of the arrows on a picture carousel.
Hey, there you go.
You know,
That's more than I ever figured out.
yeah, yeah.
You
So
you got a leg up on me there.
yeah, and I'm terrible with languages, so that HTML stuff, yeah, tended to be pretty scary. Yeah, I go to
Yeah.
I go to a Spanish language church, and I don't speak
Okay.
Spanish. I have to use I got these translator earbuds from a company called Time Kettle, and
Oh, really?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I didn't know those existed.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
pretty cool.
they're really pretty good. They can be delayed by a few seconds, so sometimes it gets a little weird. I have to be careful because I also do the multimedia for the internet stuff for the church services. So I have to be careful that I don't let my listening to the sermon interfere with my syncing of the slideshow because he does PowerPoint. He makes it in Keynote, but I have to convert it to PowerPoint. But I have to sync the slides up to what he's saying so that the people on the internet get the same experience as the people in the congregation. But
Right.
but so I'm having to think about two things at once, and that's really, that can be kind of tough for somebody with ADD.
Completely understand.
Yeah, yeah, but
Absolutely.
yeah, so yeah, that's those are two of the five. But yeah, the Lord led me to join a Spanish speaking church. I told him I don't speak Spanish, and he said I don't care. And I got there, and they basically wondered the same thing. Why is this guy who doesn't speak Spanish coming to our church, and what can we do with him? and now I've extended the church's reach internationally, and we have more
There you go.
people who participate in the services online than we could ever fit in our little church. We have room for like
Wow.
30 people. And that's
That's
about it.
awesome.
I think we fit 50 people in there at one point because of we had a funeral service, and but yeah, and we had to have people outside too for that one. She was
Wow.
very very popular lady,
Mm.
but yeah, that was fun too because we got to set up dual settings for the television screens for the monitors, so that the people
Mm.
outside could see what was going on inside,
Oh
and
wow.
do all of that stuff. So that was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but now we're talking all
There you
about
go.
my kind of stuff.
Well, it's cool that you can participate and be such a big help with all that too.
yeah, yeah.
I'm sure it's fulfilling and rewarding to know that you can help them get their message out.
Oh yeah, for sure. Our message, because it's my message too.
Yeah,
It's just not in my
absolutely.
language. But yeah, I've always
There you
had difficulty
go.
learning languages. I've lived in Southern California most of my life, and I live in a city that's like 80% Hispanic,
Mm.
and I've never been able to get the hang of Spanish. I lived in Japan for a year, and about all I can still do is count to 10 and ask where things are. The very important phrase if you ever happen to go to Japan, "Toire doko desu ka?" That's where's the
I'll
toilet?
remember that.
Where's the toilet? Now don't
There
say
you go.
"benjo doko desu ka" unless you're prepared to use an actual benjo.
Benjo.
That's the Japanese style toilet where you squat over a hole in the ground.
Oh,
Yeah.
I learn something new every day. So yeah, that's not my style really.
No, no. Although I understand it's healthier. That it's healthier for you to squat. That's why they made those
I've heard
squatty
that.
potties.
Yeah, those little squatty potty
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah. Where you
Yeah,
put your feet up on
I've heard of those.
the little ledge, and yeah, it brings your knees up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've heard there is benefit to that. You never know. I
yeah.
might invest in one of these days.
I've considered it. It just seems a little strange. Uh,
It's not at the top of my priority list, but
no,
you never
no,
know.
no. Yeah, I think I'll get into a gym habit before I get a squatty potty. Uh,
There you go. I don't blame you.
yeah,
Uh,
but yeah. So okay, so we've talked about everybody's books, Moneyless Society, and Shipwrecked and Rescued. Shipwreckedandrescued.com. You can find Larry's book there, and books plural. If you scroll down, you can find there's a deal on getting the Coca-Cola Trail with Shipwrecked, so you can purchase both of those books at a bargain. That looks kind of cool. And yeah, I'm a huge history buff. Got it from my father. And when I was in high school, we actually homeschooled because of my father's work with the Navy, and so I got a lot of experiences that most kids don't. Where most kids are looking looking in a book and sitting in a classroom and learning about historical events. We'd be in the van going, okay, this is the historical event. Here's the book about it. Now let's get out of the car. This is where it happened.
there
And
you go.
so it
That's the way to learn.
completely changes the one's view of history. I still to
Right.
this day love getting historical antiques and things like that when I get the chance, because it's like a physical connection to the past. And for his retirement, I bought my father a nearly 200-year-old cane with
Oh wow.
with an inscription placard on the top that had the name of the giver and the recipient and the date when it was given. And I gave it to him because I couldn't figure out who these people were. So figure
Awesome.
give him a history project for his retirement. But
There
but
you
yeah,
go. That's really cool.
so definitely looking forward to getting into Shipwrecked and Rescued, and the book, and learning more about that, Larry. And then Matt's book is Moneyless Society. You can find it on moneylesssociety.com, and learn more about what it's going to take for us to get to this kind of economic utopia. It definitely sounds interesting. I'm looking forward to learning more about that too, because I'm an econ nerd, and that's one of the things I'm considering for my graduate degree. Uh,
There you go. Nice.
yeah. University of North Dakota has a great program I'm interested in. Oh, we lost your video.
Uh-oh. I think my camera might be dying here.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well,
Do
we're
you
wrapping
still
up
have my
then.
audio?
I have your audio. Yes, we have no more video. Just me,
Uh-oh.
glorious me.
I think that's
Yay!
I can plug into my regular podcast. I mean, to my regular video camera here, but yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
a different picture.
That's all right. I understand. But yeah. So it's been a real pleasure having you gentlemen on the show.
Same here.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
thank you
Yeah.
so much, Bill.
Yeah,
Really
anytime
appreciate
anytime you want to come on, feel free to book, or get Lindsay to book, or book yourself. Go book yourself.
it.
Of course, remember I also do the very special episodes, which are one-to-one episodes where we can focus on a single project. That's a different booking link. I think Lindsay has it,
Okay.
but I can
Sure.
I can send it to her. That's guest sponsored. This show I sponsor myself. Of course, using using it to promote my businesses and what all else.
Yeah.
But yeah, the very special episodes are guest sponsored, so we focus completely on the guest. So if anybody's interested in that, you can just reach out and I'll send you the link for it. Links
Awesome.
for both of your websites will be in the description for the show. So it'll be nice and easy for people to find you. And of course, the show will be available on Facebook and YouTube as videos, and on all the major podcasting platforms as audio. So yeah. But do you fine gentlemen have anything else to say to the nice people?
Just thank you very much for taking the time and consideration, and really enjoyed it. I enjoyed especially Matt's whole outlook as to where we could go. I think it's great, and I I hope that the future generations will be able to really benefit by it.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so
I
much,
hope
Larry.
to
I
I hope to
really
be a part of it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Yeah, no, and I appreciate you having me on and the discussion and everything. It's always fun, and I enjoyed hearing about the shipwreck and your stories too, Larry. I like history as well, and I'm always curious to see how things have come about. And it's one thing to experience the world as we know it, but it's another thing to discover kind of how everything was built,
Mhm.
and see how all the pieces came together. So I find it fascinating, and totally appreciate your work as well.
Well, thank you.
So,
Yep.
yeah, absolutely.
We can't figure out where we're going if we don't know where we've been. So
Absolutely.
yeah, history is
100%.
definitely important. So anyway, so thanks again, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have yourselves a wonderful day, and to all the listeners, thank you for being there, viewing and listening to the show. And be safe out there. Remember to wash your hands and stay tuned for the closing credits. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been a presentation of Bald Spots Productions. Well, I'd like to thank my producer, my beloved mother, Eileen Hatch. I, of course, am your humble host. I'd like to thank my beloved Ed McMahon, Rudy Corlew,
Yes.
and my special guests, Larry Jorgensen and Matt Holten.
Yes.
Support the show if you feel so led. We're known as Bald Spots Pro over on patreon.com. We've got some interesting ways for you to participate in the show. Don't you dare miss YWL Online. We're on Facebook and YouTube and wherever fine podcasts are offered. Tune in next time for Randy Lee Boslaw and Uma Ojeda. Please like, comment, and share to stay informed. Subscribe, follow, whatever you got to do to kick that algorithm into gear and help us reach more people, because that's the point. And of course, if you or someone you know needs support now, call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org here in the United States. That's our suicide and crisis hotline. Thanks again for tuning in, and have yourselves a wonderful whenever.
Yes.